just a quick shout out. This is my newest comic book in my cyberpunk world. It's called Shujaa the Discriminator. It's a cyberpunk comic about protest movements and AI that invades our privacy and trying to wrangle your ethics and get paid at the same time. It's live on Kickstarter right now. We're about halfway to our goal, and if you haven't checked it out already, would love it if you did. Okay, so with a clean page, let's go back to inches, lock the aspect ratio. I take this border and I put it around the page here. What this does is this helps me avoid lettering into the bleed, which is the area of the printed page that will be cut after the book is printed. So anything that's in this light blue bar is basically not going to be printed. This isn't a problem at all for this page because we have a nice heavy white space around the edges. But in the case of a page that has a full bleed art, which is where the art goes right up to the edge, you have to be careful not to put words right up to the edge, otherwise they'll get cut off. So I just use that blue bar, and it also helps me center the action where I want it if there is a page that is not quite the right size. Jake is very good about this. He hasn't given me any pages that aren't the perfect size. Next thing I do is I look at the page itself, and I go for the dialogue. So that's in the script. It's off screen. You won't be able to quite see this, but I've got 9 dialogues on this page. So I take this example here, make a duplicate, and then I make sure that this is properly formatted. For this, I use a 9-point font of this Blambot font, which is a very classic comic book font. And I set it up so it's a little tighter, helps fit more words on the page while covering up less art. Always center, and then I make 9 copies of this. This will get modified with the actual dialogue. So there's my 9 copies. And now I'll go to the script and copy in the actual words that have been written. This part is a little bit boring to watch. It's a little bit boring to do, but more absolutely necessary. It does give me a chance to review what I wrote in the script, which was at this point now 6 months ago. And when I'm working on the lettering, I compare it up to the artwork that Jake has done. And, maybe I find that the artwork is more intense or just doesn't even need any lettering at all. And so this process of reviewing the script is really nice for me as the writer to be able to do. This one is a blue, which probably won't do that one. Because I get to adapt on the fly. When I used a letterer for Robo number 1, you can kind of tell in some places where my script didn't match the art very well anymore. And, he did his job. He put in what I wrote, but I should have revised the script before giving it to him. This just lets me do it on the fly while I'm working. All right, so the next thing I do, these are largely all narration. I think this one might be narration as well. This one I've got selected here. I didn't have it labeled, but I think I'm going to change it. So these are actually all narrating, which is really easy. Narrating is these boxes, these yellow boxes that you see over top. Obviously, you can tell when the character is speaking because the balloon points right to them. In this book, Shujaa does a lot of narrating, which I think of as kind of that detective vibe, which is sort of what she's got going on here. Okay, so next thing to do is to make sure that your text has enough space in the box, centered, looks good in terms of its stacking. So this one is actually very nicely stacked already. The way that you want to do stacking usually is to make kind of an oval shape. So we've got our first line is shorter, our last line is shorter, the middle lines are a little bit wider. That's great for text bubbles. It doesn't matter as much for narrating. thing that I would look for here is whether or not any of these words would look much better if they were next to the next word. Good example of needing to be restacked is this next balloon. I'll just do this right now while I'm talking about it. We can squeeze it in. I don't think that's what we want to do, so we're going to stretch it out instead. So there's a nice stack. And character assassination being one phrase is really nice to have on the same line there. That way, it's, if you're looking at it at a glance, you kind of don't have to jump down to the next line to get confused by exactly all, which words are supposed to go together. So I'm going to leave this first one as it is. Move it over here. Pop it in the middle. The margins here are already very good. I'm going to shrink it slightly. And so you'll see this is way too close to the edge here. But we recenter. Not so bad. I think I want it a little shorter. There we go. All right, so the next part is going to be easy on this one. Hard on many of Jake's panels with all this beautiful detail. I'm going to find a place to put it. So here's another benefit. I think I want to make this like that. So now we messed up the stacking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this ever so slightly. There we go. So I added a bold and an italicized here. I wanted to add emphasis on the word radioactive because I feel like it reads better when you linger on it for just a bit longer. Luckily, this is a very easy panel for placement. Have a lot of good space that he left for us. I didn't want to cover up his flying cars. He and I talked about how interesting they looked, and he told me at length what he was thinking about each one of these when he drew them. I really enjoy talking with him about the details that he adds because he obviously puts a lot of thought into his work. This bubble might be too big, in which case I could either break up the artwork. I could break up the lettering, or I can do some tricks. So the tricks are a lot about squishing the text more. We already got a nice stack, but there are some things you can do with the way that the human eye reads things. You can make them smaller without making it look smaller. Pretty good. Let me make this just slightly wider. Okay, so these two dialogues go in the same panel. I'm going to put them up together so that I don't take too much space for them. On this page, I guess I should probably explain. Shujaa has been tracking this guy Will Green You can see him here in the fourth panel. He's got a cigarette, green jacket. She's charged with exposing some things that Will Green has done in order to disrupt his influence within the protest movement. So Shujaa herself is very sympathetic to the protesters, but she is a spy for hire. She's a mercenary, and she's been hired to take this guy out. She believes it's because he owes some money to the wrong people, and so she thinks that, he's kind of a dirty guy. Remove him from the movement that she sympathizes with, and that'll make the movement more pure, and she'll still get paid without damaging the movement itself. So as she began tracking him during a protest, these guards here for the Cascadia government, the troopers, have gassed the protest and started shooting people, and Shujaa got caught in the middle of that. So on the previous page, she has ascended the building while being shot at and sort of escaped the heat as this fog cloud rolls in. So the troopers here are chasing down protesters, and Green and his guards are over here kind of hiding out. And so Shujaa is watching all of this as it transpires. One of the best panels in the book right here is, as I described it in the script, hanging cyber ninja shit from the rooftops. So she's just doing something cool here. This is a great page for Shujaa doing cool action without actually being in the action. And I love the detail in this second panel, including, zoom in here, got Shujaa and her shadow on the rooftop. Just really excellent work. We spent a lot of time looking over these after we finished them and just talking about each and every one of the details that we love. Another one of the details that I really love on this page is this 5th panel. This advertisement is so bright, so visually loud that it is casting this red light that you can see on the characters. It's such a cyberpunk thing to just be like, oh yeah, they put up an ad across from my building and now I can never sleep again. It's like literally giving you a suntan by walking in front of this ad. So anyway, that explains a little bit of what's going on here in the text. Now I have to find a good place to put it. And unfortunately, all of the action is kind of up here in the top. So I guess I'll see. Can I put it in the bottom? I think this is going to work. I always try, whenever I can, to put balloons in an order that is both above and to the left if they're supposed to be read first. That was always a problem that I had as a kid, was which balloon do I read? I know it's a problem for early readers of comics to know how to read Western comics. It's something that I've heard like industry people talk about as a gap in the accessibility of comic books. So the more clear I can make it, which is, I'm doing probably about the best I can on this page, the better. All right, this next one, talking about the stack for this. We got a long, tall panel, lots of space down here at the bottom. I am going to stack this text very tightly, very vertically. So in this case, instead of using the auto, I'm probably going to do it by hand. I don't usually do this. That's probably about as good as I'm going to get. I used too many big words for this one to stack it beautifully in the vertical. So here in this dialogue, we have Shujaa's thoughts about her job as she goes through, something that ultimately she probably wouldn't be doing if it wasn't for the money. She wants to know, like, he's dirty, yes. Somebody wants him kind of taken out, yes, but like, why? And she's going through the ideas in her head that try to tell her, I'm okay with this. If he's working with sex traffickers, if he's working with people who sell, data from your brain when you're being traumatized to people who want to watch something very sick happening. If he is a abuser and just a disgusting person, then yeah, no problem. Let's take this guy out. She's trying to figure out how she rationalizes what's happening here in this job, all the chaos and all the things that have gone wrong on this evening, and try to make it worthwhile. Okay. I did change this line. It is not in the script. I have a note for where I grabbed it, but in order to get moving on this, I'm not going to go digging through files to find it. There's a joke in comics about a very famous artist from the 90s, Rob Liefeld, about how he always covers the feet of characters in the artwork so that he doesn't have to draw good feet. Every time I pick a place to cover up the art covering their feet, I think about whether or not people think I'm trying to avoid bad drawings of feet. It's just, I don't want to cover this good stuff in the background. I just want to pick a place that you're probably not focusing on, which is feet. And if you are focusing on feet, that's a different kind of comic, and I don't make those. Okay, we've done a lot of dialogue boxes. Time to do a traditional voice balloon. Very easy. I have a template. There are even programs that will just do this for you automatically, but since I'm doing it by hand, I use these templates that I have made to get a nice, not so strange looking voice bubble. Again, cover the feet. And one of the things I try to make sure I don't do is create a tangent where the edge touches another edge and draws your eye to the strangeness of it. All the artists in the chat know exactly what I'm talking about, because if you're an artist, you can see tangents quicker than anybody else. Two more in this last panel and we'll be done with this page. We can move on to the next one. All right, first things first, let's work on the stack here. Just need a little evidence Green's involved in whatever grim fate these girls are headed for. And then I'll do a little pro bono work. Pro bono rescue and retrieval work. That's the right bolding there. That's a better stack. lettering is very important and often overlooked, which is one of those things where, you know, if nobody notices it, you're doing a good job. I would say watching lettering is also one of those things where if you don't quite know what I'm doing, if you can't immediately see that I'm making mistakes, then I'm probably doing a good job. At least you get to look at some beautiful artwork in the background. I am happy to say that one of the streams I did for the back cover of Robo Number 3 is my most watched video on YouTube. Just one page. It was a false or fake advertisement that we made for Sunburst Tasty Treats, which is an in-universe snack, like the old comic book ads. And I often point people to it if I'm talking about how you can letter for free with this program, Inkscape, which is a free open source program. All right. So here's the tricky thing. We have so much space on this panel, lots of places to put this, but I know Jake loves these buildings, so I gotta be a little diplomatic here and not cover them up too bad. I love them too. I especially love these wires right between here. Just look beautiful. Shujaa's silhouette looks amazing. It's a good panel. It's a nice stark panel. I might even shrink this just slightly because I do like this panel so much. It has been probably the hardest comic to letter just because the art is so attractive. And he did such a good job with the storytelling that you can kind of tell what's going on without the text in a lot of places. But you know, I am at least partially vain and wanting the words to matter. All right, so this page is done. Save. All right, to move on, I move the panel out of the way. I export this to page 17. Make sure I'm exporting the page. Save it again. And then we're ready to move on to the next page. Very exciting artwork here. Very good tonal shift in the colors. One of the things I've learned since this is the first color book is how much mood colored pages add. I mean, obviously if you have read a lot of comics, you can tell that already, but when you're really paying attention to it as a creator and you notice that the work going from black and white to color just takes a step up in mood. I thought that was very gratifying. So I'm very hopeful that that this book is received well and that we'll work in color from here on out. I do still love black and white though. I think it has a lot of character to it when you draw a really cool page that just works with two tones. All right. All right, so like the last page, we've got our border up there and everything is centered and properly set for print sizing. And now I'm looking at it, I've got 8 dialogues, although looks like Jake has done a couple of the sound effects in the art, which is really nice. We're centered. There is a problem with Inkscape where when you reload, it puts all of the text left justified, even if it's rendered as centered. It's a fairly easy fix, but it's kind of a pain. And since it crashed, it did it again. All right, so we need 6 dialogues here. All right, and we've got, this is panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. No panels with multiples, so pretty easy for me to not have to flip back and forth. Just taking a quick look here, we have a really great first panel here. Obviously, we're focusing on the action. We've got green right in the middle. That's who we're looking at. But we've got these girls who've been grabbed, and then right up here in the top, still in the panel, but being a spy both to the reader and to the characters in the story. Shujaa is perched in the darkness, watching over what's happening above everything else. Really nice panel composition here. I'm very happy with this page. And then we have this sort of surprise out of nowhere, this new character, this guy who is buying these girls, and then a looming shadow comes around. And the color here really makes it pop. It's very appealing. And then also you don't even see like all of this cool graffiti that he did. Just kind of makes the background work. But then if you sit and look at it for a while, you get to look into that. I am a little bit sad. So we talked earlier about the bleed. The bleed is going to eat the edge of this whip, and it's also going to eat her finger here. I suppose I could fix it a little bit. I think I will, just because. So we're just going to off-center this one a little bit. Can I get that finger? Okay. All right. So, as I mentioned before, most of Jake's art is not full bleed because he likes these white gutters. I think it looks really good. In this particular case, I wanted to save the edge of this lettering that he's done, to save the edge of her finger, to give her this stark outline with no weird cropping when it goes to print. So I've shifted the whole page over by almost the entire width of the bleed. And luckily, there is enough white space on the other side that it won't look awkward when we're done. All right, so now we stack this. There's a lot of text. As I said, we're kind of going for that noir narration detective. And this is another vertical panel now. This one, I don't know if there's room. So I'm going to have to do some creative things. I think the first thing I might do is try to split this into multiple sentences and make 2 boxes. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this for shareholders. It's very lofty. Take this out. And I'm going to fix this. So then we'll restack this. Okay, so the reason that I did this is this panel, this first panel, has kind of two places I can put dialogue, and they're both nice. Like I don't wanna mess them up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this one. I'm probably gonna put it right here in the middle. Kind of a shame. I don't think it's gonna fuck it up too much. And I'm gonna put this bottom one there. The other thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some of those tricks that I talked about earlier. So for both of these, select the text and I'm gonna remove 6% from everything. 8.9, it's 8.94. So what this does is this makes a meaningful difference. And I'm trying to find it there. Okay, so here's the E's. It will make it smaller, like noticeably smaller. Or not unnoticeably smaller, but smaller in the sense of how much art it's covering up. And by doing that, it'll take up a little bit less of the page when I put the boxes around it. However, we don't notice 6%. I heard this trick online. 6% unnoticeable to the human eye. When you get to 7%, you start to be like, hey, that's a little bit smaller. So I've done this a couple times. It really does make a difference. On the first page of the book, which you can see on the Kickstarter campaign, there's a lot of text in the first couple panels, setting up the character, setting up the comic, and I just couldn't find a good way to make it fit without doing this trick. And then afterwards, it's a little bit cramped in some of the panels, but it doesn't ruin anything. So I've used it a couple times throughout Robo. I used it once or twice in this book. I don't want to just plop stuff on top and mess up the flow of the book. I want the art to still be a really important part of this. So let's make sure I did it with this one. I did not. So here you can see I changed everything with this one, and now the stack is different. So I will just ever so slightly do that. There we go. All right, crisis averted. I love the panel a lot, as I said, but we've got the text on there, and we didn't mess it up too much. I think I'm going to split this one as well. And make this a second box. I feel the reason I'm doing this one is not because there's not enough space, but I think putting this in a second box will change the impact of this second line, the second sentence here. That the visual pause will go along with the period to kind of create that time in between what she's saying. Okay, it's not quite small enough yet. All right. this right here. So I got this, this is one of the things about comic books is the visual space provides time. One of the things that people say about comics is time passes in the gutters. So each frame is happening, and then you have as much time as you want in this space between the panels. But when I'm lettering, I also find that putting space between two sentences visibly can also make my brain feel like there is a distinct line in between here. So Shujaa sees the handoff, and then she's switching into her altruistic mode. But as discussed previously, as kind of the theme of her character, she's working for money. So she wants to save these girls, but she's still putting it in terms of, well, I'm going to do this work for free, rather than Good Samaritan, save these girls. She's doing a job, but she's just not getting paid for it. I think this is already stacked how I want it. Yes. The interesting thing that this panel is going to have going on here is, just stretch this bubble. All right, this is not exactly the bubble that I want. I'm going to fix it a little bit, but where is this pointing to? We have Shujaa's figure on the page, but she's not actually in the panel. So I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. I'm going to make it fit better, but I'm going to have the arrow going where her shadow is coming from, which is behind these shipping crates. And one of the interesting things that I usually do this against a panel border, I'm going to flatten the arrow against the edge of the shipping crates to create sort of a border within a border. So let's see how this turned out, because this will be non-standard, so hopefully it turns out okay. First things first, this is another one where I'm really going to cut this down as much as I can. And strangely enough, like everything on this top row is going to have a little bit of, well, no, I guess these two of the first three panels are going to be a little bit smaller. Hopefully that will even further make it hard to detect that these are slightly smaller text. Okay, and I had talked previously about kind of keeping your rounded edges in your stack of text. This is still tight for my taste, so I'm going to slightly raise these edges, pull this corner out a little bit, and this will just give just a little more room to breathe for the text. And it also lets me bring this up slightly. All of these things, just little tiny changes, feel obsessive, but hopefully they will allow the text to sit in the panel without looking obtrusive. Okay. Now let's just make sure we're centered. Now, one thing I could do, yeah, it's still kind of tricky. I could put it like up in the corner and I'll cut the edges. I think we're gonna go like that. Okay, so let's get tricky here. For arrows, I always think of it as the sweepier it is, kind of the more action, the more directionality is coming out of it. That is not how I wanted this, though. So I'm going to make this a little bit skinnier. And now I'm really going to fuck with this, and it's probably going to backfire on me. So this is coming, really off the side. So I make it very sweepy. And if it's next to the character, I make it short and almost straight. That is too curved now. There we go. It's all little fiddly bits. Let's see how it looks. Not so bad. So, again, with the subtle things here, we've got her voice coming from behind the barrel, but in the presence overlapping the barrel. So it's moved into our space. It's a fun, subtle thing. It's something that I notice when I'm reading comics. Hopefully people will read it and enjoy it. But again, we don't want them to notice it. So the interesting thing about this sort of graveyard of used lettering from the past, a lot of these really interesting ones in the corner are actually from Shujaa's first appearance in Robo number 3. So not that anyone is quite so obsessive, but it is interesting to me, at least, that I'm reusing the same things when she's doing a very similar thing. I am going to modify this a little bit more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab all this again, move it off to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this text and turn it into separate letters. And that way I can kind of make it even more chaotic. I can kind of jump the letters around, make some of them a little bit bigger. Oops, too many clicks. Screams aren't the kind of thing that are structured. There we go. So now, kind of matches that, kind of fits that. We'll throw it next to him here. Getting hit with a dart in your neck full of acid. I think that's a very appropriate sound that kind of comes out of him. And, we're living in this future world, and look at Mr. Will Green here with his analog wristwatch. I never noticed that when Jake and I were going through the art. I'm going to have to talk to him about that. But, maybe he stays off grid. All right, and then we're going to use another. I really like this droopy one. I think I'm not gonna copy this. I'm gonna start with this, and I might modify it. Okay. Here's what we'll do. We'll take this segment, add, and then we're going to remove this. So this is really tricky stuff in here that I don't often do. We've got these like drips, and I like using this panel because, or I like using this balloon because it's, you know, he's burning with acid, and so even his text is dripping. And up here I'm going to pull out the, let's get this rich in here. Okay. I'm going to make this bigger. And what I'm going to do is see if I can find another font that I like that's... Oh yeah. We got this very sketchy drawn, kind of looks pukish. The ink is fading on the font. Shrink a little bit. Shrink the thing a little bit. Again, you know, the classic, I don't want to cover up the art too much. This is a really cool panel. It probably doesn't even need the retch. So let's make it tiny, see if we can fit it down here. Get it a little out of the way. All right, so, you know, we don't want to steal the show. Let's get ourselves centered. And now we're going to fix these drips because when I resized it, our drips kind of lost their flavor. Can't grab that very easily. I think this one's just going to get deleted. We're going to smooth this back up in here a little bit. There. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. So as I just mentioned, character is right here. We're going to go short, almost perfectly straight. Going to give it just a little bit of a curve. Nice. There we go. We got 3 pages done. Thank you everybody for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube or some other thing in the future, if the campaign's still alive, I hope you will consider supporting. Got it right over here. If you're watching it far in the future after the book's already come out, I hope you enjoyed watching the book get made, watching me and listening to me talk about, you know, the thoughts that I had while I was writing it and the character that I've enjoyed creating with Jake. And of course, I hope you've really enjoyed getting this really zoomed in view of his excellent art. So, I'm Jesse Keppler. I run Moose Cat Comics, and this has been pages 10, 17, and 18 of Shujaa the Discriminator, which is a standalone book in the Robo comic universe, self-published by me, often available on Kickstarter. So, again, if you're looking at this from the future, consider going to my website, moosecatcomics.com, sign up for the mailing list, follow me on Instagram, Blue Sky, here on Twitch, and thanks again.